lovely lady. Her name is A. Breeze Harper. Okay, and there are a plethora of studies that reveal how much the everyday stress of racism, violence manifests as a physical and emotional illness against people of color. Instead of reaching for unhealthy comfort foods to deal with these traumas, Breeze explains what foods and herbs she uses to take care of her emotional and physical health during these racial stressful times. Now, Ms. Harper is a PhD candidate at the University of California in the Department of Geography. She analyzes how racialism and race, manifest within the vegan movement in the U.S. Now, she is the creator of Sister Vegan Project and the new book, Sister Vegan, Black Female Vegans Speak on the Identity, Health and Society, Lateran Books, 2010. Without further ado, let's give you to your host, Breeze.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Great. So, thank you for joining me here. This is the first time I've given a food stage demo, so let me know if you can hear me. No? Can you hear me? Some people are shaking their heads, so. Okay. Hello. Yes? Great. Okay, so I was saying this is the first time I've given a food demo. I'm a PhD candidate at University of California, Davis, like they were saying, and my dissertation work has been looking at different ways of healing the body through particular vegan practices. And I'm looking at several sites, but one of my favorite and most inspirational has been Queen Afua's work. She's written the book Sacred Woman, and it's an Afrocentric vegan approach to veganism. And this book was very profound to me. In 2004, I was diagnosed with fibroid tumors, and I think 3 to 5. This occurs 3 to 5 times more in the African American female population. And my mother had a hysterectomy when she was about 31 years old because of fibroid tumors. And I decided I didn't want to go that route, so I began to look into alternative ways of curing the womb health. And I discovered Queen Afua's work and this book called Sacred Woman. And in the book, she basically talks about how the legacies of slavery and colonialism, racism, have affected the collective health of black females in America, and that we really see it manifesting in our womb health. So a lot of the women that have these fibroid tumor problems, polycystic ovarian syndrome, cysts in their breast, she links it to the industrialized diet. So the standard American diet, eating lots and lots of meat, processed meat with hormones, the dairy, refined sugar, refined flour. So it's all part of this system of what she calls a more of an industrialized, corporate, capitalist kitchen diet. And it's very, very much a problem for all peoples, but it manifests differently. Because food and health in America, the access to it is contingent upon your race, your class, your gender. There's a plethora of materials that talk about this. So I'm looking uniquely at black women because we actually have to deal with collectively with usually classism, sexism, and racism. And that affects our ability to have access to particular foods. So I learned through Sacred Woman that many of the problems that we have in our bodies, the reproductive health problems, come from these foods we had been eating, thinking that it's going to help us. In addition to that, Sacred Woman looks at the psychic component. So I'm eating particular foods that disrupt my hormones because A, I just don't have access to what I need, but I'm also dealing with repetitive trauma of racism and classism, sexism. So I wanted to offer many of my experiences growing up as the only black kid in a largely white environment in New England. I remember the first day of 7th grade when someone called me the N-word, and I was very scared. And I remember just overdosing on Smarties. I don't know if you remember Smarties, but it's nothing but pure dyed sugar. And I had done this a lot. I'd gone to college in New Hampshire, Dartmouth, in the 90s, which was very, very dynastic, elite whiteness. And to be the only kid of color, one of few, it was a lot of stress. And I remember eating things like Hershey's, cocoa bars for breakfast, drinking Dr. Pepper, and then insomnia, really bad bleeding from my menstrual cycle, just lots and lots of pain. And I realized whenever I do this, it would happen whenever I'd have these encounters where many of my peers would directly share their opinions about black people, which was usually very negative. And I remember one instance when my twin brother, my twin had attended college with me, my twin brother and I had been in my dormitory, and one of my roommates had made the suggestion that my brother had gotten financial aid only because he was black. And I remember going to the cafeteria and just overdosing on like this double cheeseburger and this milkshake, and I just felt horrible. So suffice to say, that didn't really help. So a few years later, I go to the gynecologist and she diagnoses me with fibroid tumors. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm like only 23, why do I have this? And then I discovered Sacred Woman, and I read these amazing recipes about how to cure my fibroid tumors and how to deal with all the stress. I know recipes are not the only way to help tackle structural racism, but I do know that I've met a plethora of people of color who eat things like too much chocolate, lots of sugary foods when they're having a stressful day. And then they tell me that they have insomnia, they have anxiety problems, they're having difficulty with just these physical elements and how to cure them. And a lot of them don't realize when they go to their doctors, most doctors only train in less than 3 or 4 hours of nutrition. So the doctors aren't really telling them how to combat these, they just kind of give them a prescription that's from the biopharmaceutical companies, which Queen Afua, the author of Sacred Woman, thinks is just to make money. It's not helping the root of the problem. So what I've done is, over the course of the last few years, instead of overdosing on Dunkin' Donuts when I've had a stressful day, when I've had to deal with the microaggressions of racism in a post-racial society, I've discovered these healing foods. And I'm going to make a green smoothie. It's just one of many possibilities, but I cured my fibroid tumors. I went to a gynecologist twice a year for 2 or 3 years to verify it through sonograms. And over the course of that, I also realized a lot of the anxieties that I had were cured through a more green, raw diet. So I was able to cure that insomnia, I was able to handle my anxiety better, and I was able to just feel more grounded by eating in a way that helped me. And I'm in a PhD program where I'm constantly looking into racism, whiteness, these things that add stress to my life. And I have to go out into the field and talk to people and interview people who aren't necessarily progressive when it comes to understanding that racism is a problem. So how do I eat in a way as a researcher when I come back home to talk about this without becoming more sicker, if that makes sense? So this is what I have figured out. Kale. And you can use other dark leafy greens, but I really enjoy kale. Kale is very, very, very high in calcium. It's high in chlorophyll. It's just this life-giving, beautiful green. And I realize a lot of times when I would reach for chocolate, I'm not necessarily needing chocolate for my nutrition and my physiology. There's something in it that I need. And I realize that's a comfort food, but I also need the nutrients in it to help with stress. So yes, cocoa has iron and traces of calcium, but it's also high in caffeine, and that was causing me problems. So I realized I need to replace it with healthier options. So kale is high in calcium, and kale has iron in it. The other ingredient that I realized is spirulina. Spirulina is what I add to my smoothies, and at the end of this talk, I'm going to actually put everything together so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Spirulina is high in iron. It has a lot of trace minerals. It's very good for your immune system. So when we're stressed out, and this, by the way, this recipe can work for any stresses, but I really am focusing on those that have to deal with racism. This is very good for your immune system. It's a great immune system booster. So that's spirulina, and you should make sure the spirulina that you get is organic. And this particular company, it's Pacifica, and it's Hawaiian spirulina. Be careful with many spirulinas that they try to sell you, especially if it's not organic, because there's a lot of toxic metals in them. So this is the one I would actually recommend. Apple cider vinegar, and that is very great for cleansing the body in the morning. I add it to my smoothies. It's also great to add to these cruciferous vegetables because it's hard for many people to digest cruciferous vegetables. So it's very important that you have 1 or 2 digestives in a raw green smoothie. So the other digestive that I swear by is ginger. So fresh ginger root. Not this whole thing because you'll probably give yourself diarrhea, but I use a small bit of fresh ginger in this. And ginger is very, very warming. It's excellent for immune system. It's very, very great if you have poor circulation, and it helps your blood flow very well. It's great for your digestive health. It's an aphrodisiac. And what I like about ginger, it's one of the raw ingredients that Queen Afua recommends for the womb, for your womb health. It's very good to cleanse the womb and to help with ailments such as fibroid tumors. I also use Maca, and you can't just use any Maca. So I had to research because the natural foods industry is so profitable. A lot of companies will actually sell you things that they know you'll probably think, oh, I've heard of Maca, it must be healthy, I'll buy it, but they may not actually sell you the right one. You have to make sure when you start getting into particular herbs and supplements that you're actually buying the correct one. And I know it's all subjective, but you have to make sure you buy one that's sustainable, it's organic, that the people who harvest it are actually treated humanely, and most importantly, with this particular Maca brand, it's Lepidium peruvianum chacon. That's the Latin root. There's many different types of Maca, but this is the one you should purchase. It's by the company Soul Raiz. They're out in LA. And what I think is amazing about Maca is that it helps with physical and emotional stress, and it's a hormonal balance. So in addition to having to deal with the stresses of racism and doing this research about racism within the vegan food system, and just living in a culture with a lot of hostility toward Black people, to be honest. We live in a society that there's a lot of anti-Black racism. In addition to that, I've given birth twice in the last 4 years, and just the postpartum stresses of trying to raise 2 kids under the age of 4 with no child care help, it gets to you. And with Maca, I realized that taking this, just 1 teaspoon a day, really improved my energy level, and there's no caffeine in it. It's loaded with lots and lots of minerals. And if you're one of many women who just gave birth and lost their hair, or know people who've lost their hair, this helped me grow my hair back. I lost about 1.5 inches of my hairline, and this helped balance my hormones. Take this 1 teaspoon in the morning with my smoothie. Don't take it alone. You might actually hurt your stomach. Don't mix it in water. It's nice to mix everything together with the maca root. And this is also, whether you've given birth or not, this is great for the libido. So if you're having problems with sexual health due to certain stresses, this is excellent, especially for postpartum issues where a lot of women who've just given birth 5-6 months down the line are like, I am not interested in this sexual intercourse because of just the stress of raising that kid, and the hormones are kind of out of whack. So I discovered this, and yeah, it's good. Avocado into the smoothie. So avocado are one of those things where people think, you know, I eat like 2 a day, and they say, don't you gain weight? It's fat. You have to understand there are good fats and there are bad fats. And you need a certain amount of fat to deal with stress, and a balance of fats. And your brain is made primarily of fat. So I encompass 1 avocado into my smoothie in the morning. It's also high in protein, so a lot of people who don't want to become vegan because they say they miss eggs, they incorporate avocados into their diets, and then they no longer crave eggs. So a lot of times we crave things we miss because of the nutrients they're giving us. So this actually basically replaces eggs because it gives you that nice balance of fat and protein that you usually get from eggs. And it's a nice way to bind and combine everything. It gives your smoothie a nice texture. It's a nice binder. So the Hass avocados I greatly suggest because of the high fat content. And I had mentioned spirulina. I also take chlorella. So spirulina and chlorella they're blue-green algae. Spirulina is the builder. It builds the body. And chlorella helps to detox it. And it's a good idea to take them together. I take 1 teaspoon of the chlorella and 1 teaspoon of the spirulina. And detoxing is just a really great thing to do for the body. When we are stressed out, we do produce a lot of stress hormones. We also eat, like I said, a lot of foods that are not necessarily healthy for us. And this is a great way to just detox the body of all of that every day. In addition, it's great to detox the body heavy metals. So a lot of people have figured out that you can detox the body by eating chlorella every day because it binds to heavy metals like mercury and lead. So that's very important. And to have a lot of those toxic metals in your body, it just doesn't really help with the balance of your emotional and mental health. So I don't know if people are aware of how many people historically to the present have had emotional mental health problems because of lead and mercury in their brain and their bodies. So I thought that was great to add to the smoothie, to take out not just the emotional stresses, but like the actual physical toxins in our body. I'm not really a big fan of refined sugars, and I sweeten everything with dates. So a lot of people may not be ready for the bitterness of kale. Dates, low glycemic index, and lots of trace minerals, vitamins. It's really important if you're going to choose a sugar that it's a whole sugar. And I know everybody's body is different, so I want to offer that the recipe that I'm going to present to you works for me. But don't be scared to, taste something if you feel that, oh, this isn't working for me, there must be something wrong with me. No, actually, everybody has different chemistries. Kale may not work for you, but maybe spinach or collards do. I used to get very ill to eating raw kale. And then I got pregnant, had babies, my hormones changed, and now I can stomach kale. Not everybody can stomach everything for the rest of life. Like what you could eat at 10, you may not be able to eat at 40. It's just how things change. So this recipe is just basically an example of what you can do and what is out there for you to heal your body. So dates. I use about 1 or 2 pitted dates per smoothie recipe. It kind of takes the edge, the bitter edge off of smoothie. This is for anyone who's not used to bitters. I actually like it really bitter. I've adjusted my palate over the last 2 or 3 years to not always crave sweet. But for those of you who do, I highly suggest dates. And I use Medjool organic dates, and they're the sweetest ones, they're the most moist ones. And I don't go into sugar shock after having it. Let's see if I've got everything in here. Okay, so it looks like we've got everything. And this is a very small blender. What I usually do is I have a Vitamix blender at home, and that's a top-of-the-line blender. And finely grates, pulverizes leafy grates. So I think when I make this one, you may end up chewing your leaves a bit because this is not Vitamix. A Vitamix is like, it's a 2 horsepower blender, and it's heaven. I mean, it's $500 to $600 depending what you want, but I saved up for it, and you can get a dry blender and a wet blender. And basically it saves you money because you don't actually have to buy those plastic containers of smoothies every day. You can make your own food. And you're putting in what you want. So what I do is I buy lacinato or Dino Kale. So I'm doing the Dino Kale because I find that for beginners, lacinato kale is a little too thick. It's a little too heavy to digest for people who are not used to cruciferous vegetables. So I start with the Dino Kale. It's a thinner leaf, and I put at my blender at home. It's probably about twice as big, so I usually start with 2 leaves, and make sure you wash your vegetables. So I'm going to break it up a bit, and let's just hope it works. Okay. So the kale, that's like the heart of this. And then with the spirulina, this is 1 serving per person, would be 1 teaspoon per person. And I have a 15-month-old daughter who has been loving the kale smoothies, and she eats like raw okra, and she's used to it. So I'm teaching her early how to deal with stress and how to cure her womb health at an early age. I don't want her to be stressed out and then, you know, eat a bunch of Hershey bars and then have menstrual cycle for 10 days and can't go to school because she's in pain, which I used to have to go through. So I'm teaching her at a very early age. I hold her while showing her what to do. You know, this baby girl is what I eat, so I can make really good breast milk for you, and this is what we do so we can be less stressful and have more calcium. I tell her these things, so it's pretty exciting raising a little baby on a mostly a holistic green vegan diet. So for the chlorella, which is the one that I greatly suggest you mix with the spirulina, I do 1 teaspoon of the chlorella mixed with the spirulina. It works together. It's a nice little synergy. And ginger, I have a very high tolerance for ginger at this point, but I break off maybe about this much per serving. So it's probably about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch of ginger, and I throw it in there. Very important for digestion. And for the apple cider vinegar, I use about a cap. And the avocado, I'll use a whole avocado, medium to large. See if we have enough room in the blender for the whole thing. And I like the Hass avocados. They're higher in fat. So I think an avocado is great to reach for instead of a pint of ice cream, because we like that fatty comfort feeling when we overdose on ice cream during stressful times. So I'll add an avocado in there to deter me from reaching for that pint of ice cream. Even if it's vegan, the coconut bliss, I still don't need to overdose on it. So that's good. And then for this, I'll add 2 dates, since I know not everyone is used to this. And make sure you take the pits out of your date. Most dates still have pits in them. And the last thing I want to talk about, you can put in raw pumpkin seeds. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm not going to do that this time, but pumpkin seeds are high in selenium and other trace minerals, but people eat them for relaxation. And what helps a lot of people relax when they're stressed out are magnesium and selenium. And a lot of folk will have pumpkin seeds in their diet that I meet who've taught me about herbal remedies. And oat straw tea. Oat straw tea is high in selenium as well, so it's nice to drink that maybe before going to bed. It doesn't actually sedate you the way other teas do, it's just high in those minerals. So I often will combine oat straw tea with nettles. Nettles is very, very high in calcium, iron, all those trace minerals, and it's high in chlorophyll. It helps to cleanse the kidneys and the liver. It's great for your hair health. So a lot of us, when we're stressed out, our hair falls out. We have skin problems. It's all connected, the emotional, the physical. So I'll talk more about that after I make this. So I'm going to put this in the blender, and I'm hoping it'll work out, because I am not actually used to using blenders that aren't necessarily a Vitamix. We'll see. And I blend it. I forgot to bring the ice cubes, but it gets rather hot, and you want to keep your raw food as cool as possible. So I usually put in 3 or 4 ice cubes in there when I hit the blender on high for about 2 minutes. Does anyone remember if I put the maca in there?
We didn't.
Okay, let me put the maca in there. So I said before, I do 1 teaspoon of maca. And what I do is, I know this looks like a lot, I don't drink the whole thing in the morning. You'll give yourself raging diarrhea. So I drink it throughout the day. So 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then 1 in the early evening, 1 serving. So this should last you the whole day. And I have a bigger blender, I'll make more for the family. And they have some too. And since there's maca in it, don't drink it after 4 or 5 because you may be kept awake. I don't have a problem with it because I'm so exhausted from the kids at the end of the day anyway. I just conk out even if you give me lots of maca. But most people, if you're sensitive to maca or things that give you a lot of energy like maca, don't drink it probably past 4 or 5 in the day. Okay. So this is the elixir of life that I call it. So I've been told that we have cups. There's cups over there, so I'll let people taste it after. But like I said, this is the first time I've given a food demo. I'm usually out in academic spaces talking about my dissertation work. But I want to talk more about not just what I did here, but other things that I've been incorporating. So my research is looking at, structural racism and how African American females kind of combat structural racism through Afrocentric veganism. But I also want to acknowledge that we live in a society where access to food really is based on race and class. And I do acknowledge that a lot of people who may even be listening to what I'm talking about may not have access to these foods, and they really need it. So there are a lot of places in the East Bay area that help people get the access to the foods that they need to have healthier lives, emotionally and physically. So I've been looking at People's Grocery. There's the Oakland Food Connection. The Applied Research Center out in Oakland has done extensive work really trying to convey to the nation how race and class affect food access. So they're a great place to look at too for resources. And then there's the Food Empowerment Project out in San Jose. They're really dedicated to understanding that a lot of these superfoods that come to us unfortunately come to us through exploited labor, a lot of Latino immigrant labor. So they're working to try to get these communities that are giving us all of these great green foods, how these communities don't have access to that because they're paid so low. So they're trying to get access to the foods that these communities need. So particular organizations like that, if you contact them, they'll probably be able to help point you to the direction of how to get foods like this that I'm talking about. Other things that I've also learned is building a network, a community of people who are serious about food health and deconstructing, combating racism. So I've gone online basically to find this particular community of women who are part of this push to understand that food justice and racial justice are intertwined. So I do find a lot of the support that I need online. And Sacred Woman, the book by Queen Afua that has inspired me, she has a lot of followers online that started their own types of groups for communities in wherever regions you are. So there are Sacred Woman groups in the East Bay area. So if you go online, if you're a woman of African descent or an ally or someone who's just interested in how do I eat in a way that decolonizes my body from the legacies of racism, slavery, all that stuff, and how do I find that support, then if you go online and research Queen Afua's work, Queen Afua, Sacred Woman, East Bay area, San Francisco, Oakland, you'll find a lot of these women who are talking about the things that I'm talking about for you to have that community. There's also ways to afford these types of food. Is that a lot of women who can't afford just buying on their own, they'll all go in together and pitch in and say, I'm going to buy some spirulina. This will last one person a half year. So if you can't afford this, it's $45, and maybe you can afford it if 5 other people pitch in. Just ideas like that. I think it's really important to recognize these things because spaces like this, a lot of it assumes that everybody has middle to upper class access to food and nutrition. And I think it's really important to kind of recognize that a lot of us do have challenges to these because of living in a society where your health is based on wealth. So with that said, how much time do I have? We're ready. So it's 1:40, I'm supposed to end. I invite you to taste the smoothie, and I do want to let people know that this is not going to be sweet. It is a bitter, okay? But it's going to make you feel good, and you know, whether it's stresses of racism or you know, stresses of just having to work 100 hours a week, it's really, really important to kind of encourage yourself to reach for the foods that will help you with physical issues. And just coming from someone who almost lost my womb to overdosing on Hershey bars and Dr. Pepper, and you know, overdosing on all of these foods high in hormones, and kind of shifting and literally curing my fibroids and curing so many other issues, and becoming more balanced so I can do the social justice work that I want to do, and not be like a plethora of women of color who have died early because of the stress of trying to deal with racism, combating racism, and no one really telling them at the end of the day it would have been helpful for you not to have had 10 cups of coffee, but some kale smoothie. So it breaks my heart when I read these stories. A lot of my favorite Black feminist icons who have died young from a lot of these ailments that probably could have been prevented had they had access to wisdom of people like Queen Afua. So here's the smoothie, and there's cups over here. And you can, if you're interested in the work that I do more, I'm sorry I don't have cards on me, I'm trying to be green. You can contact me at breezeharper@gmail.com. So breeze, like open the window, let in the breeze. And Harper, HARPER @gmail. And I have a book called Sista Vegan, and it's Black women speak on food, identity, health, and society. It's the first book of its kind that looks at the racial and gender experience of being vegan in this country. And a lot of the stories that the women share are basically about how they have to deal with the stress of racism, classism, sexism, homophobia if you're queer, and how they had to transition from the standard American diet to the more holistic Afrocentric vegan diet. It doesn't have to be Afrocentric vegan, but there are many people who come from cultures that have foods that helped their people before we all got swooped up and our minds colonized to accept what the corporate capitalist kitchen has given us. So this is just one example of many that you have, these options to deal with stress in society and to bring back to your own communities. So